Thursday evening. I was stuck in the kind of traffic that makes you question every life decision that led you to Austin, Texas. The I-35 was a parking lot, and I'd just spent 4 hours convincing a client that no, we couldn't move load-bearing walls because his wife wanted a bigger kitchen. My name is Carter Wells, and at 38 years old, I thought I had my life figured out. My phone buzzed. Voicemail from Nicole. I was driving, or more accurately, sitting perfectly still behind a Prius with a bumper sticker about coexistence, so I glanced at the automatic transcription instead of listening. It's a habit. Maybe a lazy one. The first part was standard Nicole. Hey babe, I'll be running late tonight. Got pulled into an unexpected meeting with the marketing team. Don't wait up for dinner. Love you. Then, after a pause notation, more text appeared on my screen. Okay, sent. He'll believe it. See you in an hour, bye. I read those words 3 times. The traffic moved 6 inches. Someone honked. I didn't notice. I pulled into a Shell station parking lot with the kind of precision you develop when your hands are shaking and your vision is narrowing into a tunnel. I sat there, engine running, air conditioning blasting, and I listened to the voicemail. Her voice came through clear as a bell for the first part. Then silence. I almost hung up. Who listens to dead air? But something kept me on the line. Background noise. The distant sound of heels clicking. And then her voice again, muffled but unmistakable, talking to someone else. Okay, sent. He'll believe it. See you in an hour, bye. The transcription had caught what my ears would have dismissed as nothing. She thought she'd hung up. She hadn't. I sat in that gas station parking lot for 47 minutes. I know because I watched the clock on my dashboard tick away like some kind of countdown. I didn't cry. I didn't punch the steering wheel. I didn't call her back screaming. I thought, 6 years of marriage. We'd met at a charity gala. She was working the event for her pharmaceutical company. I was there because my firm had donated. She'd laughed at my terrible jokes. She'd worn a blue dress that made her eyes look like the ocean. I'd thought I was the luckiest man alive. I screenshot the transcription. I saved the voicemail to my personal cloud, my work cloud, and emailed it to myself for good measure. Then I drove home. Nicole walked through the door at 9:15 p.m., her heels clicking on our hardwood floors the same way they'd clicked in that voicemail. Hey babe, she said, dropping her purse on the kitchen counter. Sorry I'm so late. That meeting just dragged on forever. I watched her face. Studied it, really, like I was looking at architectural blueprints for a building I'd never actually examined before. Her smile was perfect. Her eyes were warm. She was lying to me with the ease of someone who'd had a lot of practice. No problem, I said. I ordered Thai. You're the best, she kissed my cheek. I'm going to shower. Save me some pad Thai? Always. I watched her walk down the hallway to our bedroom. Our bedroom, where we'd slept side by side for 6 years, where I'd told her I loved her 1,000 times, where she'd apparently been planning her betrayals while I snored next to her. I made a decision in that moment. I wasn't going to confront her. I wasn't going to give her the chance to cry, to explain, to gaslight me into thinking I was crazy. I wasn't going to let her spin this into something that was somehow my fault. I needed to know everything first. Then I would act. I called in sick the next morning for the first time in 4 years. My boss, Gerald, actually asked if I was dying. I told him stomach bug, and he told me to stay the hell away from the office until Monday. Nicole left for work at 7:30 a.m., same as always. She kissed my forehead, told me to feel better, and walked out to her white BMW. The car I'd surprised her with on our 5th anniversary. The moment her taillights disappeared around the corner, I got to work. Her personal laptop was sitting on the desk in our home office. She thought I didn't know her password. But 6 months ago, we'd been at a dinner party, and she'd had one too many glasses of wine. I'd watched her type it in to show someone a photo. Bluebonnet 2019. the year we got married, and her favorite flower. I thought it was sweet at the time. I didn't snoop the way a heartbroken husband snoops, scrolling aimlessly through messages, looking for pain. I created a systematic log. Dates, times, screenshots. Everything organized in a folder on a USB drive. Her iCloud photo stream was still logged in. And iCloud, bless its invasive little heart, saves location data. She'd been to the Driscoll Hotel downtown 17 times in the past 4 months. Always on Thursday afternoons. Always for 2 to 3 hours. Nicole had told me she had regional training sessions on Thursdays. I closed the laptop and sat back in my chair. The Driscoll. Historic. Expensive. The kind of place where people go when they want to feel like their betrayal has some class. I took a half day that Friday and drove downtown. The Driscoll's lobby bar is the perfect place to pretend you're working on a laptop while watching the elevator bank. I ordered an overpriced coffee and waited. At 2:15 p.m., my wife walked through the revolving doors. She was wearing a dress I'd never seen before, red, clingy, the kind of thing she never wore to work. Her hair was down, which was unusual. She looked like a woman on her way to a date. I stayed perfectly still behind my laptop screen. She didn't notice me. Why would she? I was supposed to be home with a stomach bug. 15 minutes later, a man walked in. Tall, silver-templed, the kind of handsome that comes with expensive suits and corner offices. He approached Nicole at the elevator bank. They stood too close. His hand touched the small of her back with the familiarity of someone who'd touched it many times before. They stepped into the elevator together. I knew that man. I'd shaken his hand at Christmas parties. We'd made small talk about golf, about the Cowboys, about nothing at all. Derek Palmer, Vice President of Operations at Whitfield Grant Pharmaceuticals. My wife's boss. I sat in my car in the parking garage until my meter expired twice. I fed it quarters like a zombie, not because I wanted to stay, but because I couldn't figure out how to leave. Derek Palmer. Married. 3 kids. I'd met his wife at a company barbecue 2 years ago. Pretty woman, quiet, seemed tired in the way that mothers of young children always seem tired. This wasn't some random hookup. This wasn't a moment of weakness with a stranger. This was calculated. Long-term. This was my wife sleeping with her married boss in a historic hotel, while I sat at home thinking she was learning about quarterly projections. I drove to a hardware store and bought a voice-activated recorder and a GPS tracker. The teenage cashier asked if I needed help finding anything else. I said no. He had no idea he was witnessing the moment a marriage died. That night, I lay in bed next to Nicole and stared at the ceiling. She was sleeping peacefully, her breathing soft and even, her hand resting on my chest like it had 1,000 times before. I wondered if she dreamed about him. I wondered if she ever felt guilty, lying next to the husband she was betraying. I wondered if any part of our marriage had been real. "You okay, babe?" she murmured, half asleep. "You're tense." "Just thinking about work," I said. "Go back to sleep." She made a small sound of contentment and nestled closer. I lay there, rigid as a board, until her breathing deepened again. The woman I loved was gone. Maybe she'd never existed in the first place. The woman next to me was a stranger wearing my wife's face. The recorder went in the pocket behind Nicole's passenger seat. Over the next week, I retrieved it twice while she was in the shower. The first recording was a phone call. Derek's voice, tinny through her car's Bluetooth. "I miss you already." "I know, me too. When can I see you again?" "Thursday, same as always. Patricia's got the kids at some school thing." "What about, when can we finally be together, for real?" "I'm working on it, baby. You know I am. These things take time." "I know. I just hate all this sneaking around." "It won't be forever. I promise." The second recording was worse. Nicole on the phone with her best friend Megan. So how was Thursday? Megan's voice familiar from 100 dinner parties. Amazing, as always. Nicole laughed. God, Megan, I feel like a different person when I'm with him. And Carter doesn't suspect anything? Please, Carter's so predictable. He'd never suspect anything. He's too busy with his blueprints and his client meetings. Maybe you should just divorce him. This sneaking around can't be healthy. Not until Derek leaves Patricia first. I'm not going to be the bad guy here. Besides, I need to make sure I'm taken care of financially. Carter makes good money, but Derek? Derek's in a different league entirely. I listened to that recording 3 times. Then I put it in a folder with everything else. Predictable. That's what my wife thought of me. Too busy with my blueprints. Meanwhile, she was spending our money on lingerie I'd never see and hotel rooms where she entertained her lover. The GPS tracker painted a clear picture. Thursdays at the Driscoll, Tuesday and Wednesday nights, supposedly late work meetings, at a lake house on Lake Travis. I did some research. The lake house belonged to the Palmer family. Derek's wife, Patricia, visited her parents in San Antonio every Tuesday. I created a spreadsheet. Dates, times, locations, duration of visits. I wasn't doing this to torture myself. I was building a case. Our joint bank account showed small cash withdrawals, $200 to $400 twice a month for the past year. I'd never questioned them. Why would I? I trusted my wife. Her personal credit card, we shared a login for emergencies, showed purchases I'd never seen. Expensive lingerie from that boutique on South Congress. A Michael Kors bag I'd never noticed. Spa treatments on Thursday mornings, probably to look her best before meeting Derek. She was using our money to fund her affair wardrobe. Our money. The money I earned designing buildings while she was earning promotions on her back. Thomas Wright's office was on the 15th floor of a downtown high-rise. He came recommended by a colleague who'd gone through a nasty divorce 3 years prior. Mr. Wells? He shook my hand, gestured to a chair. Tell me everything. So I did. The voicemail, the transcription, the investigation, the spreadsheet. Thomas listened without interrupting. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair. You've done more homework than most clients I see. Usually, people come to me with suspicions. You've come with evidence. I'm an architect, I said. I build things. I wanted to make sure I wasn't building a case on a shaky foundation. He almost smiled. Texas is a no-fault divorce state, which means you don't technically need grounds for divorce. However, adultery can affect property division. Judges have discretion. He paused. But there's something else we need to discuss. You mentioned you have a prenuptial agreement? Nicole's idea, actually. Her parents insisted. I remembered how I'd bristled at the suggestion, how I'd seen it as an insult to our love. I signed it because I had nothing to hide. Thomas opened a file on his desk. I had my paralegal pull a copy from the county records. Mr. Wells, are you aware of what's in Section 7? I shook my head. Section 7 is an infidelity clause. If either party engages in adultery during the marriage, the cheating spouse forfeits their claim to 60% of marital assets and waives spousal support entirely. I stared at him. You're telling me? I'm telling you that if you can document this affair, and it sounds like you already have, your wife's prenuptial agreement becomes a very powerful weapon. She essentially signed away her financial security the moment she stepped into that hotel room. I thought about Nicole, sitting across from me 6 years ago, insisting we needed a prenup to protect both of us. Her parents had been concerned that their daughter might be taken advantage of by a man with less money than their family. The irony was sharp enough to draw blood. So, what do I need? More evidence, solid, documented, preferably third-party verified. I'm going to recommend you hire a private investigator. James Reed's office smelled like coffee and old paper. He was 52, with the kind of face that had seen too much and the calm demeanor of someone who'd stopped being surprised by human behavior decades ago. 22 years Austin PD, he said, shaking my hand. Homicide detective for the last 8. Retired 4 years ago because I got tired of dealing with dead people. Figured I'd deal with the living for a change. He gestured to a chair. Sit down, Mr. Wells. Tell me what brings you here. I handed over my folder. The spreadsheet, the recordings, the GPS data, everything I'd gathered over the past 2 weeks. James flipped through everything slowly, methodically. His expression didn't change as he listened to the recordings on my phone. Nicole calling me predictable, Derek promising they'd be together soon. When he finished, he looked up at me with something approaching respect. Most husbands come to me with a gut feeling and a lot of anger. You've come with a case. Can you make it airtight? I can try. He leaned back in his chair. Mind if I ask how you're holding up? This kind of thing. It takes a toll. I thought about the question. I'll fall apart later. Right now I need to focus. James nodded slowly. That's a healthy approach, actually. I've seen too many men lose their minds at this stage. Start following their wives around personally, confronting the other man, making threats they'll regret. He tapped my folder. You've kept your head. That's going to serve you well. I'm an architect. I design structures that stand up to stress. I figure I should apply the same principles to my life. James almost smiled. All right, Mr. Wells, let me tell you how this works. He spent a week documenting Nicole and Derek's affair with the kind of thoroughness that would make a prosecutor weep with joy. Photographs of them entering and exiting the Driscoll, time-stamped to the second. Video footage of Derek's hand on my wife's lower back as they waited for the elevator. A particularly damning shot of them kissing in the parking garage of Whitfield Grant's office building. Found something interesting, James said, when we met to review his findings. Your boy Derek's been booking these hotel rooms under a fake name, Robert Ellis. Uses a personal credit card his wife doesn't know about. Smart. Not smart enough? James slid a folder across the table. Here's where it gets interesting. You know who Derek Palmer's wife is? Patricia. Met her once or twice? Patricia Palmer, née Whitfield. Her father is Richard Whitfield. I felt my eyebrows rise. The Whitfield. As in Whitfield Grant Pharmaceuticals? The very same. Derek didn't just marry into the company, Mr. Wells. He married into the family that owns the company. The old man gave him his VP position as a wedding present. I sat back in my chair. The implications were staggering. So if Richard Whitfield finds out his son-in-law is sleeping with a subordinate employee, Derek loses everything. His job, his stock options, his social standing. Probably his marriage too, and Patricia's daddy isn't going to let him walk away with much. James's expression was professionally neutral, but I caught a flicker of something in his eyes. Something that might have been satisfaction. You've got leverage here, Mr. Wells. Lots of it. I drove home that night with my head spinning. This had started as a simple betrayal, my wife and another man. Now it was something larger, messier. There were innocent people involved. Derek's wife, his kids. Did they deserve to have their lives destroyed because their husband and father couldn't keep his pants on? I called my sister Ashley from my car. Carter, it's almost 11. What's wrong? I need to talk to someone. I told her everything. The voicemail, the investigation, Derek Palmer and his wife and his father-in-law and the whole tangled web. Ashley was silent for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was hard in a way I'd never heard from my little sister. That witch, that absolute witch. She took a breath. What are you going to do? I don't know yet. Whatever you decide, don't do anything illegal. Don't do anything you'll regret. She paused. But also, Carter, don't let her walk away clean. She doesn't deserve it. I thanked her and hung up. I sat in my driveway for another 20 minutes, looking at the house Nicole and I had bought together, the house where we'd talked about having kids someday, the house where I'd built her a window seat in the bedroom because she'd always wanted one. I made a decision. I wouldn't break any laws. I wouldn't do anything that would land me in jail or compromise my career. But I would make sure that everyone who deserved to know the truth would know it. And I would protect myself. I spread the chess pieces across my mental board and studied them. Nicole, my wife, the primary betrayer, Derek Palmer, the affair partner, married to the boss's daughter, too stupid to realize he was risking everything. Patricia Palmer, Derek's wife, an innocent victim, just like me. Richard Whitfield, Patricia's father, the man who held Derek's career in the palm of his hand. Megan Price, Nicole's best friend. She knew about the affair and said nothing. She listened to my wife call me predictable and didn't think to warn me. I wasn't interested in petty revenge, slashing tires, sending anonymous emails, posting on social media. That was the behavior of an angry child. I wanted justice. There's a difference. The timing came to me when I was reviewing Nicole's calendar on her laptop. Whitfield Grant Pharmaceuticals was hosting its annual company gala in 3 weeks, a black tie affair at the Four Seasons Hotel in downtown Austin. Derek Palmer was scheduled to receive the Leadership Excellence Award at this event, presented by his father-in-law, Richard Whitfield, personally. The symmetry was beautiful. Derek would be standing on stage, basking in the admiration of his colleagues, accepting an award for leadership and integrity, while his mistress sat in the audience and his wife smiled proudly nearby. That would be when everything came to light. But first, I had a decision to make. Patricia Palmer deserved to know before the gala. She didn't deserve to be blindsided publicly, no matter how satisfying that might be for me. She was a victim too. I created a burner email account and spent 3 hours composing the message. In the end, I kept it simple. I'm sorry you have to see this. Your husband has been having an affair with an employee named Nicole Wells for at least a year. I know because Nicole is my wife. You deserve the truth before the gala. I'm not asking for anything from you, but you should know. I attached 3 photographs. Nicole and Derek entering the Driscoll. Nicole and Derek kissing in the parking garage. A screenshot of Derek's credit card statement showing the Robert Ellis Hotel reservations. I hit send before I could talk myself out of it. 1 week until the gala. 1 week for Patricia to decide what she wanted to do with the truth. I met with a real estate attorney to understand my options regarding the house. Nicole and I owned it jointly, but I'd made the down payment entirely from my savings, documented, thank God, because I'd insisted on keeping the paperwork. I opened a new bank account in my name only and began redirecting a portion of my direct deposits there. Completely legal, since it was my earned income. I wasn't hiding assets. I was protecting myself from being cleaned out if Nicole discovered what I knew and tried to act first. At home, I played my role. The unsuspecting husband. The predictable man who was too busy with his blueprints to notice his wife's betrayal. Nicole mentioned the gala over dinner one night, her eyes bright with excitement. Derek, Mr. Palmer, invited me to receive recognition as his top sales performer. Can you believe it? I could believe it. I could believe a lot of things about Derek Palmer and his approach to recognizing his top performers. That's great, honey. I'm proud of you. Would you want to come? It's black tie. Might be boring for you, but... She hesitated. I saw it. A flicker of discomfort. She didn't want me there. Of course she didn't. But she couldn't refuse without raising suspicion. I'd love to support you, I said, reaching across the table to squeeze her hand. Wouldn't miss it. She smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. That's sweet. I smiled back. I wondered if she had any idea that she'd just handed me a front row seat to her humiliation. 3 days after I sent the anonymous email, Patricia Palmer responded to my burner account. "Who are you? I need to meet in person." I hesitated. This was a risk. Patricia could be setting a trap. She could be loyal to her husband despite everything. She could tell Derek, and the whole plan would collapse. But I thought about the woman I'd met at that company barbecue. Tired, quiet, her smile not quite reaching her eyes even then. She deserved a chance to decide her own path. I agreed to meet at a coffee shop in Round Rock, far from downtown Austin where we might be recognized. I arrived first. Chose a corner booth with a view of the door. Ordered black coffee and waited. Patricia walked in at exactly 2 p.m. She looked different than I remembered. Thinner, more worn, but with a hard edge in her eyes that hadn't been there before. She was wearing sunglasses despite being indoors, which she removed slowly as she scanned the room. She spotted me and walked over with the careful steps of someone who'd been crying recently and was trying to hide it. She slid into the booth across from me. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. "You're Carter Wells," she said finally. It wasn't a question. "I am. And Nicole is your wife. For now." She nodded slowly. "I showed your email to my father's investigator. He was able to verify everything within 48 hours. Her voice cracked slightly. "Everything you sent, it's all true. Everything." "I'm sorry." "Don't be." Her voice was flat, but I could hear the tremor underneath. I suspected for months, maybe longer. The late nights, the business trips that didn't quite add up. The way he'd come home smelling like a different perfume. The way he'd shower before coming to bed instead of after waking up. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself Derek loved me. He was just stressed, just busy, just dealing with work pressures. I understood that impulse. I'd done the same thing, probably. Explained away the signs I should have seen. "How long?" she asked. "How long have they been?" "At least a year, according to what I found." "Probably longer." She closed her eyes. When she opened them again, they were wet. A year. An entire year of my husband looking me in the eye, kissing me goodnight, taking the kids to soccer practice, all while he was… She couldn't finish. "I know," I said quietly. "I know exactly how that feels." We sat in silence for a moment. Two strangers bound by the same betrayal. "What are you going to do?" I asked. "What are you going to do?" she countered. I told her about the gala, the timing, the plan. She listened without interrupting, her expression unreadable. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "You want to humiliate them publicly. I want the truth to come out. There's a difference." I met her eyes. "Look, Patricia, I could have done this without telling you anything. I could have let you be blindsided at the gala along with everyone else. I didn't, because you're a victim here just like me. You deserve to decide for yourself how you want to handle this." She considered that. "And if I wanted to warn Derek? Save his career?" "That's your choice, but it won't change what I'm doing." A ghost of a smile crossed her face. "Relax, Mr. Wells. I have no intention of saving Derek from anything. I just wanted to know what kind of man you are." She straightened in her seat. "You're not doing this out of cruelty. You're doing it because you believe in consequences." "Yes." "Good. So do I." She told me about the post-nuptial agreement then. 2 years ago," she said finally, "Derek pressured me to sign a post-nuptial agreement. Said it was just smart financial planning. Said it would protect both of us." She shook her head. "It would have limited my claims in a divorce to almost nothing. His lawyers drafted it." "And you signed it?" "My father's lawyers made sure I didn't." A ghost of a smile crossed her face. "Daddy's not a trusting man. He had his team review it, and they told me exactly what Derek was trying to do." I felt a spark of admiration for Richard Whitfield. The man might be a corporate titan, but he looked out for his daughter. "So you're protected," I said. "Legally? Yes. But Derek doesn't know that. He still thinks I signed the original version." She leaned forward. "He's been planning to leave me, Mr. Wells. Your wife was right about that much. But he wanted to do it on his terms, after he'd minimized what I could take." "And now?" Patricia's eyes hardened. "Now I'm going to do it on my terms." We talked for another hour. We agreed to coordinate but act independently. We exchanged burner phone numbers. When we parted, she shook my hand with surprising firmness. "Thank you," she said, "for telling me. We're both victims here." "Yes." She paused at the door. "But we don't have to stay that way." The week before the gala crawled by. Every conversation with Nicole felt like a performance. Every kiss goodnight felt like a lie. She was excited about the event. She'd bought a new dress, red, because of course it was red, and she'd been getting her hair and nails done like she was preparing for her wedding. In a way, I suppose she was. She thought this was the beginning of her new life with Derek. She had no idea it was the end of her old one. I finalized my divorce petition with Thomas Wright. It cited adultery with documented evidence, invoked the prenuptial agreement's infidelity clause, and requested enforcement of all financial protections. The papers were drawn up but not filed. Timing was everything. I prepared 3 sealed envelopes. The first was for Richard Whitfield. Photographs, timeline, a formal statement detailing his son-in-law's affair with a subordinate employee. The second was for Whitfield Grant's head of HR. Documentation of a potential hostile workplace situation. A VP conducting an extended affair with an employee under his direct supervision. The third was for Nicole. The divorce petition. To be delivered at the gala. I wasn't leaving anything to chance. The night of the gala arrived with perfect spring weather. The Four Seasons ballroom was everything you'd expect. Champagne towers, string quartet, pharmaceutical executives in tuxedos making small talk about market shares and FDA approvals. I drove with Nicole. She looked stunning in her red dress, her blonde hair swept up, diamonds sparkling at her ears. The earrings I'd given her for our 4th anniversary. "You look beautiful," I said, and I meant it. She did. She always had. "Thank you, baby." She squeezed my hand. "Thanks for coming with me tonight. I know these things aren't really your scene." "I wouldn't miss it." I parked. We walked inside together. Nicole's arm looped through mine, the picture of a happy couple. The ballroom was already crowded. Crystal chandeliers, white tablecloths, the Austin pharmaceutical elite in their finest attire. I spotted Derek immediately. He was working the room, shaking hands, accepting early congratulations on his upcoming award. When he saw me with Nicole, his face flickered, just for a moment, with something that might have been fear. I caught it. He looked away quickly. Nicole excused herself to say hello to some colleagues. I watched her weave through the crowd toward Derek. They didn't speak directly, too many eyes, but I saw the glance they exchanged, the heat in it, the promise. They had no idea what was coming. I found my seat at a table near the back. Patricia Palmer was at the head table, wearing an ice blue gown and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. We exchanged a small nod across the ballroom. The plan was in motion. Dinner was interminable. Salmon and asparagus, and small talk with strangers about the Austin real estate market. The woman seated to my left, a regional sales manager named Barbara, spent 20 minutes telling me about her son's admission to UT Austin. The man to my right kept checking his phone under the table. Nicole sat with the sales team near the front, where Derek could see her. She glowed under his attention like a flower turning toward the sun. Every few minutes, she'd glance back at me and smile, and I'd smile back like a dutiful husband. "You and Nicole make such a lovely couple," Barbara said during dessert. "How long have you been married?" 6 years, I said. "Ah, still in the honeymoon phase. My husband and I have been married for 32 years. Trust me, it only gets better." I wondered if her husband had ever slept with his secretary. I wondered if she'd be so chipper about marriage if she'd heard her spouse call her predictable to a friend. "That's wonderful," I said. "I hope we're that lucky." The dessert plates were cleared. The string quartet stopped playing. Richard Whitfield took the stage. He was 72 years old, with a full head of silver hair and the commanding presence of a man who'd built an empire from a small pharmacy in rural Texas. He spoke about the company's growth, its commitment to innovation, its values of integrity and excellence. "This industry demands leaders of character," he said, his voice carrying across the silent ballroom. "Men and women who put principle before profit, who understand that our business is built on trust. Trust from patients, from healthcare providers, from the communities we serve." I glanced at Derek, who was nodding along like a man in church. And that's why it's my particular honor to present this year's Leadership Excellence Award to a man who embodies everything Whitfield Grant stands for. A man of vision, a man of integrity. Richard smiled, the proud smile of a father-in-law who believed he'd chosen well. "A man I'm proud to call my son-in-law. Derek Palmer, please come up and accept this award." Applause filled the ballroom. Derek stood, buttoning his jacket, straightening his tie, smiling his million-dollar smile. He worked the room even as he walked, nodding to colleagues, winking at subordinates, playing the role of beloved leader to perfection. He had no idea it was the last time he'd ever play it. He was halfway to the stage when Patricia stood up. The applause faltered. Derek stopped mid-stride. People looked around, confused. Patricia was supposed to remain seated, playing the supportive wife, waiting to applaud her husband's moment of glory. Instead, she walked calmly toward the stage. Her blue gown rustled in the sudden silence. Derek's smile froze. "Patricia, honey, what are you—" She took the microphone from the podium before he could reach it. Her hands were steady. Her voice was clear. "I'm sorry to interrupt," she said, the speakers carrying her words to every corner of the ballroom. "But I believe my husband's colleagues deserve to know the kind of leader he really is." The silence was absolute. You could have heard a champagne bubble pop. Derek lunged for the microphone. "Patricia, you're clearly not feeling well." She stepped back, easily avoiding him. "I'm feeling better than I have in years, actually." She turned to her father, who was standing frozen at the podium. "Daddy, your son-in-law has been having an affair with one of his sales representatives for over a year." Someone gasped. Someone else dropped a glass. Patricia pointed directly at Nicole's table. "Her name is Nicole Wells. She's here tonight, with her husband." 300 heads turned toward Nicole like sunflowers, tracking a new and terrible sun. I watched my wife's face drain of color. Watched her hands grip the tablecloth hard enough to turn her knuckles white. Watched the careful life she'd constructed crumble into dust. Derek found his voice. "This is insane. Patricia's clearly having some kind of episode." "I have photographs," Patricia continued, her voice rising over his. "Videos, hotel receipts, credit card statements. Everything documented and verified by a licensed investigator." She paused, letting that sink in. "Would you like me to share them with the room?" Derek shut his mouth. Richard Whitfield's face had gone from confused to something far worse. A cold, calculating fury that had built a pharmaceutical empire and destroyed competitors without mercy. "Is this true?" he asked Derek, his voice quiet but carrying in the silent room. Derek opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. That hesitation was all the answer anyone needed. I stood up. The movement drew eyes, but I didn't care. I walked through the stunned crowd toward Nicole's table. People parted to let me through, watching me like I was a character in a play they couldn't look away from. Nicole saw me coming. Her eyes were wild, desperate. Carter, Carter baby, this is all a misunderstanding. Is it? I stopped in front of her table. 17 visits to the Driscoll Hotel. 2 nights a week at Derek's lake house. The lingerie you bought on our credit card. The dress you're wearing right now. Is that what you wore for him? Or did you buy something new for your recognition tonight? Her face crumpled. How did you? I reached into my jacket and removed the envelope. I placed it in her trembling hands. You've been served, I said. The prenup is ironclad. Don't come home tonight. Carter, please, we can talk about this. I made a mistake. A mistake is forgetting an anniversary. This was a choice. You made yours. I made mine. I turned and walked toward the exit. I didn't run. I didn't look back. Behind me, I heard Nicole calling my name. Her voice cracked. Broke. I kept walking. I heard Richard Whitfield's voice, loud enough to carry, Derek, you're fired. Effective immediately. Security, please escort Mr. Palmer out. I heard someone crying. It might have been Nicole. It might have been Derek's children's future, falling apart in real time. I pushed through the ballroom doors and kept walking. The valet brought my car. I tipped him $20 and drove away from the Four Seasons, away from my wife, away from 6 years of marriage built on a foundation of lies. I drove to my sister's apartment. She met me at the door with a bottle of bourbon and a hug that lasted longer than any hug we'd ever shared. I was tracking the gala hashtag on social media, she said, as she led me inside. Someone posted a video. It's already got 50,000 views. Great. You did the right thing, Carter. Did I? I sat down heavily on her couch. I destroyed her in front of everyone she worked with, everyone she knew. I didn't just end our marriage. I ended her career, her social life, everything. Ashley sat next to me and poured 2 generous glasses of bourbon. She destroyed your marriage, Carter. You just made sure there were consequences. She handed me a glass. Remember when Mom and Dad divorced? Remember how Dad just let it happen? How Mom walked away with half of everything, plus the house, plus alimony, and he never said a word about how she'd been sleeping with her tennis instructor for 2 years? I remembered. Dad had been too proud or too broken to fight. He'd spent the next decade in a 1-bedroom apartment while Mom lived it up in the house he'd paid for. I wasn't going to be Dad, I said. No, you weren't. Ashley clinked her glass against mine. To consequences. To consequences. We drank. How do you feel? She asked. I thought about it. I don't know yet. Ask me tomorrow. She poured me another drink. We sat on her balcony and watched the Austin skyline glitter in the darkness. Somewhere out there, my marriage was ending in real time, and I was drinking bourbon and watching the stars. My phone buzzed. Nicole. I declined the call. It buzzed again. Nicole. Declined. A text came through. Carter, please answer me. We need to talk. I can explain everything, please. I turned off my phone. She's going to keep calling, Ashley said. I know. What are you going to say when you finally talk to her? Nothing. My lawyer will handle all communication going forward. Ashley smiled grimly. Good boy. The next morning, I found out what had happened after I left. Derek had been escorted out by security. Richard Whitfield had publicly fired him in front of 300 guests, colleagues, subordinates, industry contacts. Career suicide couldn't have been more complete if Derek had pulled the trigger himself. Patricia had filed for divorce that same night. Her father's lawyers had been waiting with paperwork ready. Derek, it turned out, had almost nothing. The house was in Patricia's name. The stock options had clauses that voided them in case of termination for cause. The man who'd promised Nicole he'd take care of her could barely take care of himself. Nicole had been stranded at the Four Seasons. She'd called her friend Megan, but Megan hadn't answered. She'd called her parents, who'd driven 3 hours from Houston to pick her up. She'd called me 47 times. I counted them the next morning when I turned my phone back on. Her voicemails progressed through the stages of grief in fast forward. Denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and finally, something that sounded almost like acceptance, buried under a thick layer of self-pity. "Carter, this isn't fair. You humiliated me in front of everyone I work with. You destroyed my career, all over one mistake." I saved that voicemail. I wanted to remember the way she called a year-long affair one mistake. I wanted to remember how little she understood of what she'd done. I sent one text in response. My only reply to any of her messages: 17 hotel visits isn't a mistake. It's a choice. You made yours. I made mine. The divorce proceedings moved faster than I'd expected. Nicole's attorney argued that the prenup was unconscionable, a legal term that basically means so unfair it shouldn't count. Thomas Wright was ready for this argument. He'd been ready for it since day one. "Your Honor, my client signed this agreement in good faith, with full legal counsel 6 years ago." Ms. Wells's own attorney reviewed and approved the document at the time. The infidelity clause was her parents' suggestion, designed to protect their daughter from, ironically, exactly the kind of betrayal she later perpetrated against my client. Nicole's attorney, a sharp-faced woman named Margaret Blake, her name was Margaret Coleman, tried to argue that the evidence was obtained illegally. Thomas pointed out that Texas is a one-party consent state for recordings, and that the GPS tracker was placed on a vehicle my wife and I jointly owned. Judge Rebecca Foster disagreed with every objection. She reviewed the evidence, the photographs, the recordings, the timestamps. James Reed testified about his investigation, walking the court through every piece of documentation with the methodical precision of a man who'd spent 22 years on the force. "Mr. Reed, in your professional opinion, how long would you estimate this affair had been ongoing?" "Based on the hotel records, credit card statements, and GPS data, at minimum 13 months. However, there are indications it may have begun earlier, possibly 18 months or more." Nicole sat at the defendant's table looking like a shell of the woman I'd married. Her hair was pulled back in a plain ponytail. She'd lost weight, too much weight, too fast. The fire that used to burn behind her eyes had guttered out. Part of me felt sorry for her. A small part. A part I stomped down every time it tried to surface. She had a chance to look at me during a recess. I expected anger or hatred, or at least resentment. Instead, I saw something that looked almost like acceptance. Like she'd known this was coming and had simply been waiting for the other shoe to drop. "The court finds that the prenuptial agreement is valid and enforceable," Judge Foster announced. "The respondent's infidelity is documented beyond dispute. The infidelity clause is therefore activated." Nicole closed her eyes. Her attorney put a hand on her shoulder. "Ms. Wells will receive 40% of marital assets rather than an equitable division. She has waived her right to spousal support as specified in the agreement. Each party will be responsible for their own legal fees." I should have felt triumphant. I'd won. Everything I'd planned for had come to pass. Instead, I felt hollow. Like I'd performed surgery on myself to remove something poisonous, and the wound hadn't healed yet. But at least the poison was gone. Whitfield Grant's HR department opened an internal investigation into Derek and Nicole's relationship. What they found was worse than I'd imagined. Derek had promoted Nicole twice during their affair. Both times, he'd overridden other candidates who were more qualified. One of those candidates, a woman named Sandra Mitchell who'd been with the company for 8 years, filed a complaint. The investigation concluded that both promotions constituted inappropriate favoritism tied to an undisclosed personal relationship. Both were voided. Nicole's salary was retroactively adjusted. She was given a choice: resign quietly with a severance package and sign an NDA, or be fired publicly with cause. She took the severance. Her pharmaceutical sales career in Austin was over. Word spread fast in that industry. The woman from the gala, the one who slept with her boss, the one whose husband served her divorce papers in front of 300 people. No one was hiring Nicole Wells anytime soon. Megan Price, Nicole's best friend and faithful confidant, suffered her own consequences. Brian Foster's wife, Amanda, had been close friends with Megan for years. When Amanda found out that Megan had known about the affair and said nothing, had listened to Nicole call me predictable and laughed along, she cut Megan off completely. "You watched your friend destroy her marriage," Amanda told her. "You could have said something to Carter. You could have warned him. But you didn't. You chose your loyalty, Megan. And it wasn't to the truth." Nicole's social circle evaporated overnight. The women she'd brunched with, the couples we'd vacationed with, the friends who'd toasted at our wedding, none of them wanted to be associated with the woman from the gala. Some of them reached out to me, apologized for not seeing the signs, offered to be there if I needed anything. I thanked them politely and kept my distance. I didn't need their guilt. I didn't need their pity. I just needed to figure out who I was going to be now that I wasn't Carter Wells, husband of Nicole. 3 months later, I got promoted to associate partner at my architecture firm. "We've watched how you handled this whole situation," Gerald said when he called me into his office. "The dignity, the composure, the way you didn't let personal problems affect your work." He shook my hand. "That's leadership, Carter. We want more of it around here." I threw myself into work, designed a museum expansion that won a regional award, started running in the mornings, training for a half marathon I'd never have considered before. Lost 15 pounds I hadn't realized I was carrying. I started therapy too. Not because I was broken, but because I wanted to understand how I'd missed the signs. How I'd lived next to a stranger for 6 years and never known it. Dr. Amara Obi was a small woman with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense approach. She listened to my story over 3 sessions before offering her assessment. "You didn't miss the signs because you're stupid, Carter. You missed them because you trusted her. Trust isn't a weakness. Betraying trust is." "I feel like a fool." "You're not. You were a man in love with his wife. There's no shame in that. The shame belongs to the person who exploited that love." I bought out Nicole's share of the house at a reduced rate, as specified by the prenup settlement. I thought about selling it, starting fresh somewhere new, but decided against it. I'd built that window seat for her, but it was still a beautiful window seat. Why should I let her take that from me too? I remodeled the master bedroom. New paint, new furniture, new sheets. I threw away everything that reminded me of her. I kept the house. I kept my career. I kept my self-respect. Derek Palmer's fall was complete. After being fired from Whitfield Grant, he tried to find work at other pharmaceutical companies. But Richard Whitfield was not a forgiving man, and he had connections everywhere. I heard through James Reed, who kept tabs on things out of professional interest, that Derek had applied to 6 different companies in the Austin area. 3 rejected him outright. 2 called him in for interviews that went nowhere. The 6th offered him a position and then rescinded it 3 days later. Word is Whitfield made some calls, James told me, over coffee one afternoon. Not threatening, nothing illegal, just informational, making sure the right people knew exactly why Derek Palmer was suddenly available. "Isn't that tortious interference or something?" James shrugged. "Maybe, but Derek would have to prove it, and that would mean deposing Richard Whitfield. Nobody's stupid enough to drag that old man into court." Derek ended up taking a job at a small medical supply company in Oklahoma City. 70% pay cut. No stock options. No corner office. No father-in-law's money propping up his lifestyle. He was selling catheters and surgical gloves instead of cutting-edge pharmaceuticals. Patricia's divorce was finalized shortly after mine. She got the house, a 7-bedroom mansion in Westlake Hills. She got primary custody of the kids. She got a settlement that left Derek with almost nothing but his car and his Oklahoma apartment. The post-nuptial agreement he'd never managed to trick her into signing would have saved him. Instead, he was destroyed by the same arrogance that had led him to think he could cheat on the boss's daughter and get away with it. He called me once, Patricia told me during one of our occasional coffee meetings. About a month after the gala, he was drunk, crying, saying he'd made the biggest mistake of his life and he loved me and the kids, and he'd do anything to come home. What did you say? I said he should have thought about that before he spent a year in hotel rooms with your wife. She smiled, but it was cold. Then I hung up and blocked his number. He never contacted Nicole again, ghosted her completely. She wasn't the love of his life, she never had been. She was just a risk he'd taken that hadn't paid off. Nicole moved back to Houston to live with her parents. Her mother, Linda, called me once to tell me I was a vindictive monster who'd destroyed her daughter's life over male pride. I hung up on her. Her father, Robert, sent me a text 2 days later. I'm sorry about my wife. I know Nicole did this to herself. I hope you find peace. I didn't respond, but I appreciated it. Nicole sent me one final letter. Handwritten on stationery I recognized from a set I'd given her for Christmas years ago. Carter, I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I need you to know that I did love you. I made a terrible choice and I'll regret it forever. I hope one day we can talk. I read the letter twice. I tried to find something genuine in it, some spark of the woman I'd thought I married. All I found was more lies. I did love you, past tense. One terrible choice. Not a year of choices, not 17 hotel visits. 1. I put the letter through the shredder and went back to my blueprints. 11 months after the gala, I was sitting in a coffee shop downtown, a different one from where I'd met Patricia, when a woman approached my table. Carter Wells? I looked up. It was Patricia, looking better than I'd seen her in months. She'd gained back some weight. Her hair was shorter, more modern. She was wearing jeans and a simple blouse, nothing like the designer gowns from company events. Patricia, hi. Mind if I sit for a minute? Please? She ordered a latte and settled across from me. For a moment, we just looked at each other. Two survivors of the same shipwreck. I wanted to thank you, she said finally, for that email, for the evidence, for giving me the push I needed to finally leave. You would have figured it out eventually. Maybe, maybe not. She shrugged. Derek was good at lying. He'd been doing it for years, I think. Not just with Nicole. She wasn't the first. I wasn't surprised. Men like Derek didn't change. They just found new targets. How are the kids? I asked. They're okay, confused, but okay. They see their father every other weekend. Her jaw tightened. He's already dating someone, a 26-year-old who works at his new company. Sounds about right. What about you? How are you doing? I thought about it. A year ago, I would have said I was fine, even if I wasn't. A year ago, I was still learning how to be honest with myself. I'm better than I was, I said. I started therapy, got promoted at work. I run now. I'm even dating someone, sort of. It's early. Patricia smiled. That's good. You deserve it. We talked for another hour. About the company, she still got updates from her father's friends. About Derek's pathetic new life in Oklahoma. About the strange bond between people who've been betrayed by the same cheaters. Before she left, she mentioned something offhand. I heard Nicole's engaged. I blinked. What? Some guy she met at a bar in Houston, 3 months after your divorce was finalized. Patricia's expression was carefully neutral. My father's assistant heard it from someone who knows her mother. I waited to feel something. Jealousy? Anger? Betrayal? Nothing came. Good for her, I said, and I almost meant it. I hope she treats him better than she treated me. Patricia gave me a look that said she doubted it. Take care of yourself, Carter. You too, Patricia. She walked out of the coffee shop and I went back to my coffee. I drove home as the sun was setting, painting the Austin skyline in shades of orange and pink. The house looked good. I'd had the exterior repainted last month, a warmer shade of cream that Nicole had vetoed when we first moved in. I'd planted new flowers in the front beds, changed the landscape lighting. It was still the same house, but it felt different now. Mine. Not ours. Just mine. I poured myself a glass of good bourbon and sat on the back porch. The yard was quiet. Crickets were starting to sing their evening chorus. My phone buzzed. A text from Elena Reyes, a project manager I'd met through work. We'd been on a few dates. Nothing serious yet, but she laughed at my bad jokes and didn't seem to mind that I was still figuring myself out. Still on for Saturday? I smiled. Typed back, absolutely. Pick you up at 7? Perfect. Can't wait. I set the phone down and watched the last light fade from the sky. Somewhere in my cloud storage, the voicemail transcription was still saved. I'd never deleted it. Not because I wanted to remember the pain, but because I never wanted to forget that the truth, even when it hurts, is always better than a beautiful lie. The crickets sang. The bourbon was smooth. And somewhere in Houston, a woman I used to love was planning her next wedding. I raised my glass to the darkening sky. Good luck, Nicole. You're going to need it. Then I went inside to start dinner. I was making steak tonight. Medium rare, the way I liked it. Not well done, the way she'd always insisted. Just one more thing I'd gotten back.